On November 15th, 2024, we're going to begin the countdown to 2027. In fact, it's about 27 months before we get to the 2027 month of global shift. And what we're experiencing right now is a lot of things that look very disruptive, things that are scary. There's a lot of fear about tomorrow. There's a lot of fear in general. This can be explained. There are a lot of trends that can be seen to be repeating. We are in a time of fear, and that's been in place since 2022. And let me explain how it happened in 2004 to 2006, when a lot of the same themes were playing out in the collective. And so we've been there before. And today I'll show you what was happening at that time and how everything that you see as being fearful probably isn't as scary as you think. The best way to see the trends is by going back, because by seeing the patterns, we can sometimes plan for the future. So let's go back a little way, back to November 27th, 2022. This is a 2-year process that will end December 4th, 2024. Now, this is a big deal because if you think about the splenic gates as awareness gates, or how we find more information, we tap into energy. There's a lot of different themes that the splenic gates come with, but they also come with some level of fear. So you could say we've been in the environment or the aura of fear since November 27th, 2022. Now, this is coming to an end, as I said. And how will the world look when we leave this energy behind for another 9.5 years? So this is a cycle, and we've been in it. And it has left a lot of people with a lot of fear. The overwhelming level of anxiety and fear has been off the charts in a lot of ways. And with the current election that happened, that brought the fear even more to a head, where people really don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. And nobody should have to live like that, because we're here to find something more than just being scared. We have a background frequency of the global cycle of the cross of planning that we are also living in, which can up the amount of fear. And I will talk about that in a later video. But for today, we're going to focus on the trends that happened from March 2004 to April 2006. Now, of course, human design isn't connected to politics, and yet we can see the patterns and the logic so intricately interwoven within the choices that we make. Because if you look at the perspective of the global aura, it is always conditioning us. It is always bringing us to the point of certain energies. Now, we can look at the energies as being something that we are aware of, or alternatively, we can walk through the energy without the awareness. And when that happens, all you can feel are levels of fear. And those fears can be related to many different things. So if we look through all the different splenic gates, we can see what are the fears that are going to be most prominent within those 2 years. Fear of broken patterns. Fear that patterns are repeating that are not good. Fear of the past. Fear of the future. Fear of failing. Fear of not having enough money to make it through, to be able to support yourself. And so those are profound energies when you don't have the awareness to look at the energies as being what they are. So in 2004 to 2006, that energy was pushing on people, and people were ready for change. There was a lot of political uprising and unrest. This was a time when people just didn't trust their governments anymore. They didn't trust the people in power, and suddenly they wanted to shift. And it was in very dramatic ways that this shifts happened. So let's go through a few countries. This was not specific to only the US. This was other countries. I picked a few countries that have democracies in play because that's how we see it the best, because it's logical energy. So let's begin with the US. So back in November 2006, there was a midterm. And in that midterm, George Bush was at the helm as president. He'd had a good run because of September 11th, and people were trusting of him. And yet, this is where things started to shift. And what happened was the Democrats had what they called a Democratic wave. And now that's a big deal in a political scheme. So we can imagine that everybody was in the global aura of all these fear gates, all these splenic gates, and suddenly all they could think of is they wanted something different. When the splenic gates finish, they finish in the gate 18 and the gate 17, exactly where we are right now. And that talks about correction. It talks about things not working anymore. It talks about having fear of things not working, having fear that authority isn't doing their job, having fear that the patterns are breaking all around us. Now, fast forward to 2024 and look at the perspective of what people consider to be potentially a very shocking election because it was so one-sided. We could say it was a Republican wave in the US. Now, this trend matters because it shows how we are propelled by the energy. Another seeming replica of this energy occurred in Canada when in January 2006, a snap election was called because the Liberal Party, led by Prime Minister Paul Martin, was having a confidence crisis, as well as scandals over corruption, and Stephen Harper, leader of the Conservative Party, was voted into power. Fast forward to 2024. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, is under tremendous scrutiny, and there are calls to resign almost every day. Even though general election doesn't happen until 2025. Now, keep that in mind because that is a framework that all these energies are working within. They're working within the framework of the logical pattern of these moments when people go and they vote for somebody new. As we know, we can always have a jumping of that boundary where we have snap elections. Similar dramatic shifts in government happened in Australia, which went from a coalition government to what would be considered a huge win for the Labour Party under the leadership of Kevin Rudd in 2006. Now, fast forward to November 2024. Australian Prime Minister Albanese has had his worst approval rating in November, which eventually might lead him to losing power in 2025 when the next general election happens. In the UK, Tony Blair, who'd been the Prime Minister since 1997, resigned on June 27, 2007, which was another political shockwave. Fast forward to July 2024. Keir Starmer became Prime Minister when he swept to an unequivocal victory for his Labour Party. What does this say? Now, this is just a small sample, but what it all says is that we are in a pattern of change where people are being propelled by fear, all those themes that the splenic gates bring. And now more than ever is a time for awareness to actually see that it is not as bad as we might imagine. Right now, in this particular moment, we are going through the Gate 18 Line 3, which is called zealotry. What that says is that we can't fix anything. We just need to throw it all away. And that is kind of what we see happening in the world. But is it true? And that's the biggest question we have to ask ourselves.
To the cause of all suffering, which is imagining onto a situation what isn't happening. We can't see what is happening, so that fear has taken the place of wisdom. It has moved it aside, or we can say it overrides it.
And so if there are things that we can't fix, if there are parts of our lives that we can't make better, if the government isn't who we want it to be, how can we work with that? Well, it is sometimes about being away from the energy and being in your own space to find joy in something that makes you feel good. If you can't fix something, why worry about it? Easier said than done, clearly. And as we move into 2027 and the new global cycle, the cross is a sleeping phoenix. There's an energy that is telling us all the path to the future. And that is about surrendering to the idea that when you've done everything you can, there is a point at which we have to stop and say, that is enough. And now I cannot live in fear any longer. It is not good for my health. It is not good for my mental health. It is not good for me. And now I need to go and find something that makes me feel good. And when we turn on our lights and step out of this fear, suddenly the world is a different place. Because not only are we feeling better and empowered, but we're also spreading that energy to other people, which is really needed right now. Right now, fear is at an all-time high, but when the shift happens on December 4th, we will be able to finally shake off some of that energy of the past 2 years and move into something new. And with the North Node in the Gate 25 and the South Node in the Gate 46, it also says that even if change feels scary, this isn't our first rodeo. We've done this before. Life is shifting, and as we move into 2025, it promises to reveal a lot of truth that's been hidden during Neptune's extended transits through the Gate 36. 2025 is going to be a year of ending cycles and new beginnings of all types. Of course, there's much more to the changes that are happening because not only are we repeating a cycle, but we're also moving into something that hasn't been in place since 1615. Yet now we are being asked to look to ourselves, to claim our own authority, and to see that the power you hold can only grow when you recognize that you even have it. We've forgotten about our power. We've forgotten because we've been in a fog of fear. But as we move forward to 2027, it's not only important but essential to be open to seeing the truth and connecting with your awareness. Aligning with your truth, being in your flow is where you will find the most security. As political changes and shifts reverberate through the world, it's important to know that you have the answers you need. You have it within you. And when you start to believe that truth, that you have the answers, you'll have a vital tool that you need to navigate a shifting landscape. You have the power within you. You just have to remember that it's still there. Until next time, take care and bye for now.